citizenship, legal immigration reform, an employee verification system, and new protections for workers already in the U.S.
We can't go on forever with 11 million people living in this country in the shadows in an illegal status.
We have virtually been going for maybe 25 years without a clear statement about immigration policy. That's unacceptable in this nation of immigrants.
I see the right spirit. I see things that were once off the table for agreement and discussion being on the table with a serious pathway forward.
In this hour at the White House, President Obama and Vice President Joe Biden will hold another meeting as they push for gun control. This time their meeting is with police from across the country, including the police chiefs of Aurora, Colorado, Oak Creek, Wisconsin, and Newtown, Connecticut. All three towns the sites of deadly mass shootings over the last 6 months. Also today we are covering the interview that has everybody talking. President Obama's joint sit-down with outgoing Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Was it his official nod for her potential 2016 run?
There's no political tea leaves to be read here?
We don't have any tea. We've got some water here, the best I can tell. But, you know, this has been just the most extraordinary honor.
Is this payback for, let's say, Bill Clinton doing such a great job for the Obama campaign?
It would have covered up the awkward fact that they're setting her up for, you know, a presidential run if they broke some news.
I love Joe Biden. I think he's earned a shot at it. But if Hillary Clinton wants to run, how do you stand in the way of history?
Let's dive right in. Joining me now is MSNBC and NBC Latino contributor Victoria De Francesco Soto. She is also a fellow at the University of Texas, and it's great to have you here in person. And let's jump in to explain to everybody the bipartisan framework. There are 8 different sections that I want to go over. Let's go over the first 4 on their immigration reform ideas. Contingent on securing border and combating visa overstays, increased surveillance equipment, require completion of an exit entry tracking system, and commission of border governors and leaders to assess enforcement. Your thoughts on those first 4?
You know, I think the second and third part of that is the most important, because we've been securing our borders for over a decade. We've been putting more money into the border, more boots on the ground, more fences. But the one Achilles heel has been visa overstays. When we think immigration, the first thing that pops into our mind is Mexican immigrants crossing our southern border. And yes, that has tended to be the root of immigration. But those folks who come over from all over the world for 6 months on a visa and end up staying for 10 years, 20 years. So this immigration reform is saying we need to think about immigration in a broad way and also how it may link to terrorism. All right, so the next 4 points: illegal immigrants register, pay fine and back taxes, plus pass background check, work history, current employment required to earn permanent residency, illegal immigrants at back of the line, and exemptions for immigrants who came to U.S. as children and farm workers. What sticks out to you here? Well, here what we're seeing is the fairness component of it. If you came here illegally, we are going to give you a shot at the American dream, at citizenship, but you got to go to the back of the line. And that's what differs from the 1986 immigration reform, where they just said, apply for citizenship, you can get long-term residency for 5 years and then become a citizen. And that left a very bad taste in people's mouth, especially if you've been here waiting in the legal route. All right, real quickly, let's show everybody, though, the federal government, a new CNN ORC poll, the question being, should the federal government develop a plan for undocumented immigrants to become legal residents? 53% say yes. Then we have this. So this is really interesting, Victoria, because this bipartisan group of senators coming out today, almost stealing the thunder from the president's first big policy speech coming tomorrow in Las Vegas. There is the Immigration 8 right there. Marco Rubio, a part of that Immigration 8, and he wrote a Las Vegas Review op-ed saying, my hope is President Obama will use his voice and influence to further this approach. However, if what he offers is a process for the undocumented that is more lenient, faster, and unfair to those waiting to come legally, it won't bode well for reform. Didn't use the word amnesty, but that's what he's talking about. You know what other word he didn't use, Thomas? Illegal. So he had tended to talk about illegal immigrants, illegal immigration, and we've seen a change in the rhetoric of how Marco Rubio is talking about immigration. And Marco has come to the table and really put his face forward, but what he has done is he's the enforcer. He is the one in this gang of 8 that said, we can have a path to citizenship, but we've got to keep beefing up the border, and we have to look at the technology to track the people who are here. So he wants to make himself known as the tough cowboy in all of this. Well, he's a Latino Republican with a bright future in politics. For a
long time to come. So we will be watching exactly what this group talks about this afternoon, but again, we have pretty much the bullet points. Victoria, thanks for your time. We want to talk to our power panel for today. This Monday, we have David Drucker, Associate Politics Editor for Roll Call, MSNBC political analyst Karen Finney, also a columnist for The Hill, Republican strategist Alice Stewart. I want to start out right away with playing for everybody how Senator John McCain, also a member of the Immigration 8, talked about what this bipartisan plan means and also what it means for the GOP. Take a listen.
I'll give you a little straight talk. Look at the last election. Look at the last election. We are losing dramatically the Hispanic vote, which we think should be ours for a variety of reasons.
Alice, for a variety of reasons, it was not, mainly because of the anti-immigration rhetoric that was doled out by the standard bearer, Mitt Romney, all through 2012. Can this reverse that course?
Oh, it sure can. We learned a lesson, and I think this is a great first step. The framework for this plan being that it's a good consensus of Republicans and Democrats, it's a great start. And I think Victoria hit on it. Senator Rubio also hit on it. Fairness is critical in this, and the framers of this immigration plan say this is tough, but it's fair, and that's important. Those that have been going about obtaining citizenship through the legal means should be front of the line, and those who have not should go to the back of the line. But I think there's also an important emphasis on employer verification and border security, and all these are good components to a fair system for legal immigration.
The National Journal has a piece out today saying, Karen, in it, quote, the GOP wants to survive. That is one interpretation of the move toward amnesty and broad immigration reform spearheaded by a bipartisan group of senators today. The other is that elections have consequences. And take a listen to what Congressman Steve Israel had to say earlier on this.
I'm not interested in finger pointing, and I'm not interested in the old debates and the old sound bites. We need a solution that is fair and balanced, that secures our borders, that has tough, verifiable enforcement, but also provides a path to citizenship for those who are here and part of our economy. When you've got Republican senators who are willing to support this, it's time for House Republicans to support it as well.
Fair and balanced. So has the Immigration 8 done the work of the president? There's no need for that big policy speech tomorrow.
Well, I think we need both. I mean, because remember, we need the support of the White House as well as the work in Congress are going to be critical to making sure that the end result is legislation that remains fair and balanced. Because as we know, in the legislative process, all sorts of things can get changed and amendments and what have you. So I do think it's important that the president weigh in. And remember, as the president talked about last year, it's important that outside groups engage in this process. It's also important to remember that, and I think for the president to stay engaged, because he has done so much already on enforcement. So much money has already been spent on enforcement. So while, that's the good part of the talking points, I think, for Republicans, and it may also be good policy, I think, as Victoria pointed out, there needs to be this broader approach to immigration reform generally, not just with the emphasis, as it has been, on immigrants coming over from Mexico, but sort of some of the other areas where we both affecting our economy as well as people coming into this country illegally and being able to stay.
David, as we look at the motives behind the Immigration 8 and putting out their plan ahead of the president's policy speech, tell us about who these senators are, what they have to gain, and why they're trying to jump the gun on Obamagration, the policy speech that we're going to get tomorrow.
Well, I think they want to make sure that they're relevant and that the principles of their agreement drive the discussion. Clearly, Marco Rubio considers himself or could be a presidential candidate in 2016. But from my reporting and covering him over the last election cycle, one thing that he really understands is that the future of the Republican Party depends upon embracing other demographics beyond your standard white voter, and particularly the Hispanic and Latino demographics, depending on what part of the country you're in, is a major component of that. And so I think he wanted to do something about this, because every other Republican and conservative priority, whether it's budget or defense or what have you, depends on being in power and being able to execute that. And that's why Republicans are attacking this. And you've had Republicans on Capitol Hill that have wanted to do this for a long time. They've had a problem with the base. Now, with Democrats in the group, these are Democrats that care very deeply about the issues as well, whether it's Bob Menendez from New Jersey or Senator Durbin. And for Democrats, the challenge is, are they willing to give up a very useful political bludgeon with which to hit Republicans in order to get a deal done? Because once both parties, if both parties embrace this, it's a political tool that in some cases, in many cases, is off the table